Good morning, everybody. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding the Chumash. We are holding on the portion of Mitzvah. We are holding the fifth reading of that portion, which is on chapter 14, verse number 54. Zeis HaTorah. This is the law. Zeis HaTorah. This is the law called L'chol nega, to any kind of a lesion, tzaras, that's a leprosy, nesek, and to any kind of nesek. L'tzaras habeged, and to the tzaras of a garment, abayis, and to tzaras of a house. L'aseis l'sapachas, and to the seis and the sapachas. These are different kinds of negoyim, different kinds of leprosy. Lahades, l'beheres, lahades b'em hatome, to render the decision on the day that it becomes impure. Ubayim hatar, and the day it becomes pure. Zeis teiras hatzaras. This is the law of a tzaras. Now she says, lahades b'em hatome, eze yem mitare ve'eze yem mitame. Which day a person becomes clean and which day a person becomes unclean. Holding chapter 15, verse number 1. We go now into the laws of Tumah, more deeper laws, very deep and hard laws, the laws of Zav and Azava. And these are such deep laws that we don't even know this law today. What is a Zav and Azava? As was mentioned in the Torah. The Lord, the Torah, and the Abish spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, Dabal Neisol, speak to the Jewish people. V'maita alehem, and tell them, Ish, he is Zav mibsari. If any man has a discharge from his flesh, Zayvai, Tamehu, his discharge is unclean to Tame. Tuma Zav. This is not a regular discharge, a seminal discharge. This is more than that. Now she says, one might think that if he had a discharge from any place of his body, he becomes unclean. Therefore, the Torah says from his flesh, meaning not all his flesh. Since the Torah made a distinction between flesh and flesh, I'm entitled to reason that the Torah renders unclean a man who has a discharge, and renders unclean a woman who has a discharge. Thus, like a woman who has a discharge for the place of her body, which becomes unclean when a minor degree of uncleanness, nearly a nida. See, that's the difference. It's hard to know today between a nida and a zava. So a nida, we know that we still have the laws of nida. Truth is, the law we have today, we do both laws, the law of nida and the law of zava, because we're not sure what's the difference between a nida and a zava. It's very hard to know the difference. So a nida is a regular menstrual cycle, uncleanness. She becomes unclean with a major degree of uncleanness, which is a ziva. So a nida is a lower degree of impurity. A ziva is a greater degree of impurity. A flow outside the menstrual period. Likewise, in the case of a man who had a discharge from the very place of the body, he becomes unclean with a minor degree, which is a balkedi. So there's a balkedi, somebody who has a seminal discharge. That, by a man, that is a lower level of impurity. And then there's a zayv, which is a higher level of impurity by a man. Again, we don't know the difference between a balkedi and a zayv today. We're not sure what the difference is. The physical act, the physical difference. A flow outside menstrual period. Likewise, a man who has a discharge, the very place of his body becomes unclean in a minor degree, namely a keri, a seminal emission. He becomes unclean with a major degree of uncleanness, which is a ziva, a abnormal discharge. So menstrual and seminal emissions both cause a minor degree of uncleanness, one that does not require 7 days before purification. And that's why you can go to the mikveh. You don't have, but a woman does need 7 days because we consider it a zava. That's why we have the 7 day by a woman. By a man, he goes to the mikveh the next day. as opposed to uncleanness charged by a zav or a zava, which refer to a major degree of the uncleanness. So today, because of mikveh, because of nida, you can go to mikveh right away. So zoivei tami, Rashi says, apart from the discharge rendered a man unclean, this teaches us that a discharge itself is also unclean, meaning that even one drop defiles other people and vessels. What is the difference between discharge of a semen? A male discharge resembles the moisture that separates itself from the appearance of a barley dough, a thin liquid resembling that of white of unfertilized egg, whereas semen is thick, like a white of an egg of a muzeris fertilized by a male. So it's the very different color. Just like there's also by a woman the discharge, but her blood flow is a little different color between a nida, between a menstrual cycle, and a zava. So a man also, there's a difference between the color. It's very, and again, that's why it's very hard to tell between a zav and a zava, and between a balkeri and a zayv. Rabbi said, this shall be the nature of his uncleanness due to his discharge. If he had a zayv or she had a zava, as zayv, we're talking about a man, as zayv echitim b'sadei, or his flesh is plugged up by his discharge. To Masihi, this is unclean. Nashezra is an expression, rear saliva, which flows from the flesh. As zayv is again a saliva, it's like a running saliva. Ahichtim, that the discharge becomes out thick, and thus seals up the orifice of the member of the brain of his, so that the flesh is plugged up on account of the drop of his discharge. This simple meaning, the Medrash explains, however, as follows: the first number 2 counts 2 perceptions of a discharge and calls him unclean, as it says, a discharge from his flesh, his discharge is unclean. The second verse, verse number 3, counts out 3 perceptions of a discharge and calls them unclean. It says, and he shall be nature of uncleanness due to his discharge, if the flesh runs with the discharge, or if his flesh is plugged up by his discharge. This, that it's uncleanness. Now, how is this so? 2 are for uncleanness, and the third requires him to bring a sacrifice. Kol mishkav yishkav olav. This tumah, the tumah of a zav, and a zava, any bedding upon which a man with his discharge will lie, yitma becomes unclean, comes tummy. V'chol kliya sheyeshev olav, and any object, a chair, which he sits upon it, yitma becomes unclean. Now she says, kol mishkav, all bedding, anything fit for bedding. One might think that this includes even if designed for another purpose. Therefore, the Torah says upon which a man will lie. It does not say which a man will lay, in the past tense, but rather in the future tense, will lie, which is always designed for this. That means it has to be bedding. So it has to be made for the concept of somebody to lie upon it. It excludes this object, which was said, get up and let us go out to work, for which purpose it was designated. Asher Yashav, again, just as the case above in the bedding, it says will sit upon it, thus referring to an article that always designated to be a chair. Verse number 5, any man who touches the guy's bedding, has to wash his garments. So he becomes impure, and he has to go to the mikveh, and he's impure until the evening. Again, these are very hard halachas, mishkav and yishkav. This teaches us that the uncleanness of bedding is something stringent than the uncleanness caused by touching an object. And so far that a bedding or a seat becomes an avatuma, a major source. So in tuma, you have different levels of impurity. The highest level is the avatuma, so to say, what's called the father of uncleanliness. Then you have a rishon l'tuma, they have a shein l'tuma, shlishi l'tuma, levi l'tuma. So there are 3 to 4 different levels, 5 different levels, because avatuma is the highest level of impurity. which can defile a person, because an avatuma can defile a person. No, the addition, a first level of tumah cannot defile a person. Only an avatuma can defile a person. So this is like a dead person, an avatuma. So this is a concept of an avatuma. It can make a person unclean. It can defile a person and render his garments unclean. We're touching an object which is not bedding. This object becomes a vlad hatuma. So it becomes addition, a secondary source of uncleanness, which is a degree less than avatuma, and can defile only food. It can defile a person. It cannot defile vessels. So you have to, as I said, these are the laws of tum and tara. You have to know the degrees of tum and tara to know what impurifies. Today, it's not so relevant because we don't have the Beis Hamikdash. And so we don't have the laws of not that we have the laws of Tumah, but we don't have the effects of Tumah. So therefore, we don't, people are not so involved in this because basically you don't know the law. There's no effect to this law. The only effect of the law of Tumah is a woman, as the next part of the Parsha, which talks about a woman becomes impure because then she cannot live with her husband until she goes to the mikveh. Yeshiv is alakli, and somebody sits upon an object. Yeshiv alav azav. If somebody sits upon a chair that the zav sat upon, he shall immerse himself in his garments. So he becomes, because the zav is an avatuma. So now he becomes an ishin. Garments, he shall remain unclean. Rashi says even if he did not touch it, even if there were 10 objects, one on top of the other, and the man with the discharge had sat on top of one, then even the bottom seat becomes defiled because of a moishav, the law of uncleanness of seating. Thus, just as a man with the discharge defiles the bottom seat of the pile without touching it, so too a clean man becomes defiled by the bottom seat without touching it, even if he sat on top of 10 pillows. As the same applies to a mishkav, defiled bed. So there's a moishav and a mishkav. Moishav is a sitting down, mishkav is laying down. A bed or a chair. And the gay besar zav. Anybody touches the zav himself, yechab is begadim, then he becomes tummy, because the zav is an av, is a father of tumah, and he can make av tumah, a father of tumah, a major tumah can make another person a rishon. So he becomes a rishon l'tumah. Rachatz b'mayis, he has to go to mikveh. The tummy adarav, and he's tummy. So he has to, if he touched him, if the person touches zav, he has to go to the, there's two things he has to do. I mean, one thing happens automatically. Well, he has to go to the mikveh, and the evening makes him pure. So he goes away to evening. That's why a woman, when she goes to the mikveh, she goes in the evening. Because the evening, you have to have both things in Torah law. You have to have going to the mikveh, and you have to have the evening. So really, sometimes a woman could go to the mikveh earlier, but she still has to wait to the evening. There's where you have that law. Ad ha'arev. Tumah goes until the evening. So even you went to the mikveh, really you're pure already, but no, the evening brings about the purity. So it has to be that concept. Verse number 8. If a man with discharge spits upon something that's pure, something that's pure, so then that person becomes impure. Again, he has to go to the mikveh. He doesn't have to count 7 days, but he becomes an additional tumah. And he has to be careful because additional tumah cannot make a vessel tumah, but could make food tumah. It can make a shein l'tumah. It can make a food a secondary. So the zav is the father of impurity. Makes the guy who spit upon a rishon l'tumah, a first level of impurity, and he can make food a second level of impurity. Okay, you're learning a little bit about these laws of tumah and tara. So and he touches it, lifts it up without touching it. For saliva defiles it if lifted up, even without direct contact. So the point over here is the Torah will teach you have the guy who has to touch the thing, so to say. Verse number 9. if the guy didn't sit on anything, but he rode on something, if the riding gear in which a man of discharge will sit ride then the riding gear becomes impure. Although he did not sit upon it, for example, the saddle bow, called an arkan, French, it becomes unclean because of the merk of riding gear. However, the saddle itself is called alvis, a broad connection of two uprights of a saddle girth and the belly band becomes unclean because of a meshach. So the saddle itself, self-understood, is like a chair. We're talking about those things that are connected to the saddle, the handle of the saddle. So that is also becomes impure, even though he didn't touch it, because it's part of the saddle, part of the chair. Verse number 10. Whoever touches anything that will be under him becomes unclean ad ha'arav until the evening. But somebody who lifts them, that here you have the difference between touching and lifting. It's a whole different law. It's a whole different law. So somebody touches it, he becomes impure till the evening. Somebody who lifts it. So now, not only you become impure, your clothes become impure. That's a concept of noisa. It's a whole different aspect in this law. Whoever lifts them up shall immerse his garments. Not only he becomes impure, the garments, and immerse himself in water, and he's tummy ad ha'arav. The Rashi says, whoever touches anything that will be under him, under the zav, the man who had a discharge. The verse comes to teach us about riding gear, that anyone who touches it becomes unclean. So if a guy was riding a horse, the zav was riding a horse, and you went and touched it, the riding gear, not that you sat on it, you actually just touched it. The guy says, "Oh, well, be careful, I'm impure." You become impure. This feature is of mishkav, as opposed to merkav. Merkav, you have to so the mishkav and merkav, riding it, you have to clean your garments. Any of the items mentioned above in this passage discusses the law of a man with a discharge, namely his discharge, his saliva, his semen, his urine, the bedding, riding gear, or seat, defiled by a man who had a discharge. If any of these items is lifted, take this thing. The guy was sitting on a chair, and I picked up the chair. It defiles the person who lifted together with his garments. And again, you have to know the difference between mishkav and merkav and noisa. The different laws in the aspect of impurity. At the time of the Beis Hamikdash, these laws were very important because they affected your life in concerning going to the Beis Hamikdash, and especially if you were a kohen. But even if you were a regular Jew, you would have to know these laws, the laws of Tum and Tara. That you have to know the laws not only concerning yourself, you have to know the laws concerning somebody else. Because if you came into his house, or you touched his saddle, or you touched him, you would have to know the law. If the guy was tummy, now you become tummy. So now you have to know the laws. You have to know when, what is the law? Do I need to wait? Do I need to only go to mikvah myself? Do I need my clothes to be washed? Do I need to wait 7 days? Etc., etc., etc. So the very difficult laws, and the laws of Tum and Tara, as I said, there's generally different levels to impurity. The highest level of impurity is an Av HaTumah, the father of impurity, and a Zav is an Av HaTumah. And a Zava is an Av HaTumah. And that's the highest level of impurity. And therefore, anything that they touch becomes impure. And anything that they sat on, that means, as the Torah will say, a Zava, for example, sat on a chair. Now, if I pick up the chair, I have to go to mikveh, and my clothes have to be washed, etc. Pashut, you need to know. I can't give you, right now a definition and all the different levels. You need to learn these halachas. You can learn them in the Rambam. They're very difficult. You can learn the Gemara itself. But these are general. I'll just give you generally. Let's go continue. We'll continue. We'll see more and more. Whoever the man with the discharge touches, without the latter having received in his hands, didn't wash his hands. Shall immerse his garments and immerse himself in the water. If he didn't wash his hands, even the zav, then anybody he touches, he has to go to mikveh the clothes, because again, since he's an avatuma, since he's the father of tuma, then he can make clothes into orishin, and he can even matama another human being. Regularly, another human being cannot matama another human being if he's a regular tuma, but if he only unless he's an avatuma. He's a father of tumah. So this is the father of tumah. So if he touches another human being, if he touches his clothes, touches food, everything is tummy. So if he touches food, you cannot do anything. You're only allowed to eat this food when you're tummy. Touches clothes, you have to wash the clothes. Touches the person, he has to go to the mikveh. So now she says, while the man is with the discharge had not yet immersed himself from his uncleanness, and even if the discharge has ceased, and the man is counting 7 days, as long as he's not yet immersed himself in the mikveh, so you have to realize if a person is an avatuma, a person had a discharge, he's impure for 7 days. So he has to stop. It has to stop first of all. They count 7 days. So this guy who has an avatuma, anything that he touches another person, that person becomes impure at least for a day. Doesn't become an avatum, becomes an isha, therefore a first level of impurity, and therefore he goes to the mikveh that day. But this guy will impure everything throughout the 7 days, even though he's not having any more discharges. But he can't go to the mikveh, this person, until the 7th day. 7th day by night, so the 8th day. So he becomes impure, everything he touches becomes impure. And that's why in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, these laws were very important. And it was very difficult to be pure and not to defile others, etc., etc. And you have to know these laws. As long as not yet immersed himself in the mikveh, he defiles all aspects of his uncleanness. And the truth is, and even if he didn't go to, let's say he didn't go to the mikveh, as long as he didn't go to the mikveh, it could be 10 years later, he impurifies everything. And the reason Scripture expresses the immersion of a man without discharge, rinsing his hands, why is it called washing his hands? Let's go to the mikveh is more than washing your hands. It teaches us that hidden parts of the body, mouth, are not required for immersion. When you go to the mikveh, you don't have to keep your mouth open to make sure that your mouth, inside of your mouth, is in the mikveh. So the Torah uses the word hands because hands are something that's outside. So you don't have to open up every orifice of your body to make sure that water gets into it. You have to make sure that everything that your body, everything outside your body is in the mikveh. That's one of the laws. You can't have anything that is chaytzit, that separates the body from the mikveh, like a bandage, etc. You have to take, it teaches the hidden parts of the body, the mouth, are not required immersion. Only the uncovered parts of the body, like the hand, and that's why the Torah used over here the word the hand. He shall wash his hands. There's no concept of mikveh only in the hands. Mikveh has to be the whole body. Verse 12. This is where it gets a little bit more difficult because there are certain things that your matama cannot be cleansed. That's an earthen vessel. If it becomes impure, if this man touched any earthen vessels, Yeshav, it has to be destroyed. It cannot be purified. That's like also when it comes to kashrus, that if I made a earthen vessel non-kosher, it's very hard to kasher this plate. It has to be broken. The choli eitz, if it's a wooden vessel, yishat v'mayim could be put into water, could be put into the mikveh. Now she says one might think that even if he touches it from the outside of the vessel, because we know that when it comes to earthen vessel, he has to touch the inside of the vessel. If it's like a jug. Earthen vessel is only impurified from the inside, not from the outside. It's a different law in the Torah. So it's touched from the outside of the vessel, also becomes unclean. However, the conclusion of the Midrash is that the earthen vessels can become defiled only by entry of an unclean object in the inner space of the vessel. As it's taught in Teres Kainim, where the passage there continues. So if the verse indeed is referring to the entry into the inner space of the earthen vessel, why does the expression of touching? Why over here it says over here you touch it? He kind of not touching it, only puts his hands inside the vessel. So why is over here the expression of touching? As the passage concludes, well, that the touching is referred here when he touches the whole vessel. What does that mean? When he moves it, meaning in addition to the cause of entry into the inner space, if a man with a discharge moves the vessel, so that's again the concept of noise, that he moves the vessel, he carries the vessel. So carrying the vessel also makes the vessel impure, even though he didn't go into the inside of the vessel. Verse 13. So when a man of a discharge is cleansed, how does he do that? He has to count 7 days. So the guy who had a discharge, he himself has to count 7 days. The washel is closed. Then he has to go to the mikveh. The 7th day at night, to the 8th day. Now she says, when first he has to wait for the discharge to stop. Then he counts 7 days. So if he's having a discharge after discharge, he's having this situation, which he should go to a doctor, but that's a separate issue. But he's having this discharge now. He's impure as long as he's having this discharge. Shiva Shabbat says 7 clean days, free of all uncleanness discharge. He must not see any discharge during these 7 days. And all of them must be consecutive without any interruptions. So you can't have, I have a discharge. I stopped Sunday. I started Monday. I stopped Tuesday. So I'm going to count Sunday and Tuesday. No, you have to have, it's like also the laws of a woman. She has to have 7 total clean days. And if it breaks in the middle, then you have to start counting again 7 days. But this Zav has even more. But Yom Hashmini, on the 8th day, Yikach Shtei Tedim, he has to take 2 turtle doves. Shnei B'nei Yena, or 2 young doves. Ubal of Hashem, and he has to bring these 2 doves. If he goes to the mikveh, he's still not pure. And even though the night passed already, he's still not pure because he has to bring a carbon. So the 8th day, he has to bring a carbon. A Pesach Hayamayid, he comes to the house of comes to Beis Hamikdash, and the son of the Kohen, and he gives it to the Kohen. V'asa Kohen, in verse 15, the Kohen will make the first one a chatas. V'echad oila, he makes the second one an oila. V'chipar of a Kohen, and now the Kohen brings him forgiveness. Lifnei Hashem, before God, mizayvai, from his discharge. So not only he has to stop the discharge. Number 2, he has to count 7 days. Number 3, he has to go to the mikveh. Number 4, on the 8th day, he has to bring a carbon. So if he's missing any of these components, he's not Torah. And that's why today we could be all tamei, because we go to mikveh and we have the night, but we don't have the carbon, and that's the problem. So we're missing the carbon. And until we have the carbon, we're still not completed our purification from this tumah. And that completes the Chumash for today. Tomorrow, I believe, Torah goes into the law of a woman, the law of Nida and Zava by a woman. We start now today in Tanya, the 41st chapter of Tanya. Has a little bit of introduction here, as mentioned in the title page of Tanya, that this work, the Alter Rebbe says, he based this whole Tanya on the verse, for this thing is near to you, that this thing is very near to you in your mouth and your heart, that you may do it. Right? This is the Tanya is based upon. This means that observing Torah and mitzvahs with one's heart, with love and fear of God, is very near. It's in simple reach, Alter Rebbe explains. The Alter Rebbe devoted the first 25 chapters of his work to explain the role of love and fear in a Jew in the divine service. He also explained how they may readily be attained, different ways that a person can attain it. It is that the love of God, wrote the Alter Rebbe, that motivates one to fulfill all positive commandments. That's why it's the first commandment, I am God your God. In order for a Jew to perform them properly and eagerly, he must be imbued with the love of God. He can't do it in any other way. He has to have love. He has to work on that, even intellectual love for God, and a desire to cleave to him. For performing them will enable him to cleave to God. And that's what he needs to do. And we all can have that kavanah. You don't have to have very deep contemplation and meditation in godliness, but that you're serving God. And I love God. It's very simple kavanah. A lot of people are afraid of meditation because they think that it's a very deep concept. It's a very simple concept. Not a hard thing to meditate upon. Similarly with the fear of God, what Alter Rebbe said, you have to have love. You have to have two wings. You can't live with the wing of love. You have to have two wings. To fly, you need two wings. Similarly, the fear of God, at the root of one's observance of positive commandments, one stands in true fear or awe of God. He will refrain from transgression and thereby rebelling against his will. And therefore, we all need to have the second wing, which is the fear of God and awe of God, however level you want to go to it. The last chapters, the Alter Rebbe went on to explain that the love and fear are the wings that elevate one's mitzvah, causing them to ascend to the spheres in the upper world. That's really the purpose of the wings, which is about to fly. You need to connect. You're trying to create a unity. The whole concept is to the sake of unity, to bring a unity between God and the world. That was the whole purpose. And the will to God. And that's the purpose. That's the wings. So the Av and the Yira that we do, mitzvahs are the thing that connects everything Lamaila, connects everything above. Conversely, mitzvahs fulfill without spiritual intent, forced by love and fear of God, are likened to a body bereft from the soul. That's what the Alter Rebbe said. The Gemara says, Kuguf b'lei neshama. So the neshama is the kavanah, is the love and fear that we do. Chapter 41, the Alter Rebbe now goes on to say that fear of God is the beginning and core of divine service. Most of us don't realize this. And it's a Mishnah, it's based on a Mishnah. If there's no fear, there's no love. That means there has to be a concept of fear of God first. This is not only regarding the negative precepts, but also regarding the positive. There has to be a concept of awness of God, even before we have love. While it's true that love of God motivates one observance of positive commandments, nevertheless, the observance of these commandments must also be impelled by some measure of fear as well. For avodah, divine service implies an analogy with a manner of which an eved, ana avda de kucha berichu. I am the servant of God. I am in the service. I'm in the service. I serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Service out of fear. That's it. That's what means service. Service is commitment. I am committed because I'm in awe, or if you want to use the word fear, I'm in fear because I realize that I don't want to break this commitment. I don't want to break this relationship. It's important to me. I realize the negative consequences of the breakage of this relationship. So not only do I realize the positive aspects in this relationship, which is Ava, but I realize that there is also a negative concept with the breakage of this relationship. Because if we only go to the positive, you might only say, I have the positive, I don't need the positive. But there is a negative. There is a negative concept in me breaking this relationship. And that's an evid. So I am a servant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I want to be in the service of God. Because if not, I'm not in the service. I'm going to be out of the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that there's a negative concept in being out of the service. Service out of fear of God is therefore the beginning and the mainstay of spiritual service. And Alter Rebbe is going to go into this, the aspect, not the way we can translate most times, is the concept of fear. I'm afraid somebody hurting me. That's a very immature level. But as I said, the concept of the negative of this separation. Well, let's see. One must, however, constantly bear in mind the beginning of the divine service, as well as its core and its root. And that's why it's very hard for an adult to do this. And that's why it's important in education of children. Because when we do educate children, beginning, we educate them with fear. And that's important to them. So then they grow up, they will have it engraved in them, and hopefully as they grow up in a mature way. So they'll lose the immature way of fear, but they'll be left over with the maturity of fear, the aspect of respect. No parent wants their child to fear them. Parents want their children to respect them. And respect is a concept of fear, aspect of respect. That's why it says, Derech Eretz Kodma LaTorah. Respect even comes before the learning of Torah. And that's why when we learn Torah, you need to come not only because you love Torah. We love to learn. If we only love to learn, learning will not affect us. We need to come to the learning of Torah with respect. Not only because we love him, because we respect the Torah. We respect the knowledge of God, whether we understand it, we don't understand, we agree with it, or maybe even we don't agree, chas v'shalom, but we still respect it. We respect the knowledge of God. And we respect some things we do know and some things we don't understand. Some things we don't, and that's a problem today. You can learn maybe that even though I disagree with you, I need to respect you. And if I don't have respect, then that's when my disagreement becomes worse, becomes negative, because I don't respect you. So we need to respect one another. And that's why it's very interesting, the Alter Rebbe's expression over here, we should realize this. Respect is the core of service. Because if it's based on love, it's going to be negative. Because we're missing respect of one another. And we're missing respect to the subject. And we need to come to learning of Torah with respect. And it's very important that, because we'll never learn if we just come, I love to learn. I'm coming to learn Torah, not only because I love the Torah and I love wisdom. I respect this Torah. I show reverence to it, right? When the Torah comes out, I stand up. When the Torah is read, I'm quiet. Whether I understand it or not, the Torah is being read, I respect it. The Torah is lifted, I stand up. Show reverence. And that's an important thing, because that's the only way I can learn, really, is by showing respect. Sometimes I struggle with the Torah, and I struggle with the knowledge, but the second I lose my respect, I lost everything. So I always need to respect the Torah. I need to respect God, and that's the concept of this Yida. I need to have respect, trepidation. Know who you're standing in front of. Whether you agree or not, he's the Eibishter, he's God. And he deserves respect. This means even though fear is the root, you're right, for the way, turn away from the evil, and the root of love is to do good. So, what does fear have to do over here? Meaning, fear of God is basically urges one to refrain from evil and not to transgress the negative precepts. While love of God is basically motivates one to perform good deeds and positive manner. Alpha became, though, this is where people make that mistake. And they think, we'll just love God and they'll get us do good. And why bring the fear into the whole situation? People don't want to fear God, but it's a big mistake. Nevertheless, it's not sufficient to wake up the love alone to do good. Can't do that. But very least, before performing a positive mitzvah, one must first arouse the innate fear. which lies hidden in the heart of every Jew. Every Jew fears God. Every Jew respects the country. That's our nature. Because why do we love God? Because He's our creator. We don't love God. Why do we love the Eibishter? Because we have an innate love of God, because we're created, and we automatically love the creator because He created us. So there has to be a hidden concept of, if you understand that you love the Eibishter who created you, so you should respect Him because it's the same reason. Because He created you. He has the power of creation. If He has the power of creation, He can have the power of uncreating it. No Jew, as the Alter Rebbe said a famous statement, a Jew not he wants, not he can be cut off from God. Because it's impossible for him. How can I cut myself off from that gives me life? It doesn't make sense. It's not a rational concept. Why? Because I love God and I really respect Him because He created me. Not only created me, He gives me life at this present moment. So how can I cut myself off from life? I'm fit. That's like I'm not going to jump into fire. I'm not going to go I fight for life. I want to live. I want to have the God's life. I want to connect to God. Same thing. So therefore, nobody wants to go against God. Nobody wants to go against God. Everybody should not want to go against God. It doesn't make any rational sense to go against your creator, to go against an entity that can give you life or the opposite of life. Chas v'shalom. So nobody wants to do that. Knis Kalel is mentioned above. So I need to reveal that. I know that. I just need to reveal it. Just like the Alter Rebbe says, I need to reveal love of God, which is hidden within me. I need to reveal this concept also. I need to reveal respect of God, that I understand. Akel HaGadol HaGiber. I understand the awesomeness and the strength of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shes Debes Galas Libe, reverence, respect. It's like an important person runs in the room. I respect him. I respect him. I understand why I need to respect him. Shetebes Galas Libe, should be manifest in his heart, or at least in his mind. So option a Jew should be able to create a feeling of fear in his heart through meditation upon God's greatness. If, however, this proves beyond his capacity, he should at least arouse an innate fear which lies in his heart. This degree of fear is attainable so much as it does not require such a profound meditation. So if you want to create a real fear and honest of God, it's very difficult. Maybe it's difficult. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of meditation. But you can awaken up your innate, your simple, natural, innate concept. And that's it. When an innate fear may be aroused either by to such a degree that will actually be felt in his heart. Again, it's rational. I can think about it and say, listen, the Eibush is my creator. That's like I love him because God created him. I should fear him because he's my creator. And number two, if the individual is incapable of invoking powerful fear in his heart, will at least be able to summon innate fear in his mind. Maybe you won't be able to reveal it in your heart. A fear, true Yiras Hashem. But you have a seichel. You fear so many things in this world. We fear the unknown. We're constantly, we're in fear of things. In our mind. Most of the fear we have is in our mind. Nothing's happening, but still in fear. It might happen. Could happen. So that's in your mind. So we easily create fear in our mind. It's not real fear because it's in our mind. So we can create, just like we create a love of God in our mind, we can create a fear of God in our mind. In our mind, maybe you don't feel it in your heart, true Yira, but it's in your mind. I realize the Eibishter is my creator. And he is the one who gives me health and the wealth and everything else. And I should respect that. That's the concept of respecting, not taking things for granted. And that's why we make brachas every day for everything that we have, from our health or our wealth, etc. Why? Because we can't take it for granted. And we shouldn't take it for granted. It's all biyad Hashem. It's all in the hands of God. I should respect that concept. Shouldn't wait to chas shalom. I get sick. Chas v'shalom, I should understand it before I do that. And realize that's biyad Hashem. I shouldn't wait to that somebody has to make a mishabeda for me in the shul. And please God heal me. I should realize right now that the healing of God, the healing and my is all in the Eibishter's hand. I should respect that power. And it's burned the machshavte. This means in order to arouse within himself a latter category of fear, he should think about the Gedulas Ein Sofer. He should think about the power, the contemplate in his mind, the greatness of the blessedness of Machusay and his kingship. So to arouse a former category of fear, that which is palpable, felt in his heart, one must engage one's dat in profound meditation. He who is unable to do so should contemplate at least superficially God's greatness. The Eibishter is the king. His kingship spreads out both in the higher and the lower, bearing in mind that the greater the king's dominion, the more awe inspires his subjects. And let him further consider how God fills the worlds, animating them with the indwelling life force that creates the created beings can experience and comprehend. The save of Kalam and how God encompasses all the worlds. He also animates them with a life force that transcends the experience and comprehension of created beings. As the verse says, that I fill, do I not fill the heavens and the earth? Yet he leaves all the worlds, the higher worlds, and the creations of the lower worlds. Neither the higher nor the lower creatures represent the Creator's ultimate intention. He therefore does not bestow his kingship upon them, so that they call their God king. Rather, he bestows his kingship upon the Jewish nation, for Allah befrat, in general, king of Israel, and upon him particularly. The Eibishter wants to be that you should crown him as your king. He's your king. He is my king. I need to respect him. I need to love him. It's not as a general. We like to always generalize things. No. There's a general and there's a particular. The Eibishter is your king. Yechayev Adam Leima, as the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, that every person is chayev. It's an interesting expression in the Mishnah you should know. And the Mishnah you should know in general is not there to say good word, these shocking words. When the Mishnah says something, Salat Halacha, when the Mishnah Halacha says something, it says it because that's the way it is. And number two is, it says it because you have to do it. And this Mishnah says an interesting expression, chayev, you're obligated. It's not something that the Mishnah is telling you, you know what, I'm going to give you a good thing to say, so maybe it'll awaken you up. No, chayev, you're obligated to say, b'shvili nivra olam. Every person is obligated. The Mishnah says not the tzaddik is obligated to say it, not the great person is obligated to say it. Every person has to say to himself, b'shvili nivra olam. The whole world was created for me. What does that mean? That's not a gaiva statement. That's not an ego statement. That's a responsibility statement. The whole world is up to me. The Eibishter has not only a general concept in the world, a general purpose, so to say. God has a purpose for me personally. I am necessary for the whole world. And there's a purpose that I bring a completion to the whole world. And without my avodah, this whole world would not exist. Because it needs to have my avodah, my service, to be able to bring about the whole purpose of creation. It's a very powerful statement in Mishnah, you should know. Pirkei Avos. A Jew should remind himself that the whole purpose and intent of creation, vis-a-vis God's sovereignty, relates to himself specifically. And God becomes king over him. So the Eibishter, in essence, is waiting for me. Not waiting for anybody else. That's the Mishnah saying. Chayav. God is not waiting for somebody else. Don't look at anybody else. Don't look at the righteous. Don't look at the rabbis. Don't look at yourself. Because you're obligated to only look at yourself. Because God is waiting for me. In essence, I should say, God is not waiting for you. He's waiting for me. The second I say he's waiting for you, I already shrugged off my responsibility. The Eibishter is waiting for me. Here, the Alter Rebbe explains that statement. Because the Eibishter is truly waiting for me. Because the Eibishter brought me down to the world, that I would create this unity between God and the world. And that's my responsibility. And it's not important to me, another person's responsibility. Because I was created by God just like anybody else. Whether I'm a tzaddik, whether I'm a Russian, doesn't make a difference. He created me. To the realization that God bestowed his kingship upon each individual, in particular, touches a responsive chord within one. One thinks about this. That's why we do think about this, but we blame everybody else. But if you think about it and you realize that it's up to me, I can't take this world for granted. I can't blame it on anybody else. I cannot push it on anybody else because that person cannot accomplish what my neshama came down for. That person cannot accomplish my purpose. So how can I blame it on? How can I tell somebody else to do something when he cannot accomplish my purpose? He's accomplishing his purpose. I need to accomplish my purpose, and the only person who can accomplish it is me. I realize the responsibility. That's why the statement is a responsibility. It's not an ego statement. And if you understand the statement, you would create a fear within you, the responsibility that I have to the world, that I have to God, that I have to you. That's what the Rebbe said. In a very natural way, you can understand it. The guy who drills a hole in the side of his boat. He bought the seat and he drills a hole. I could say, what does it bother you? I'm drilling a hole in my seat. Under my seat. No. When I drill a hole under my seat, then we're all going down. We're all going down. So just don't think you're drilling a hole under your seat. B'shvili nivra elam. The whole world, this whole boat is going to go down because of your hole. Because of my hole. That I'm drilling underneath my seat. So I say, it's my life. What's something to do with you? That's a general film. My life. It's my life. It has nothing to do with your life. Don't mix it to my life. No, that's not true. My life is for the whole world. And that's a concept of oneness. You should really realize to respect this concept. And that's why it brings about a concept of fear. To realize the responsibility that I have not only for myself, but I have for every yid. Not only for every yid, for the whole world at large. If you think about this a little bit, you have to be like a stone, not to affect you to realize, to do something, to have a concept of respect of your creator, respect of God and his mission that he gave to each and every single one of us. An individual in particular touches a responsive chord within one, he is then more apt to demand on himself that he accept the heavenly yoke. And that's why you have to realize that I better get working, so to say, on a mission that God sent me down in the world for, because it's not only about myself, but the whole world. Klal Yisrael. Therefore, the Rambam writes that every person has to look that he can bring Yeshua L'Olam. Every person needs to look like he can bring the redemption to the world. He doesn't have to wait for somebody else. There's somebody out there is going to bring redemption to the world. No, Zalman Booker can bring redemption to the world. And Chas v'Shalom, the opposite. The opposite. I can bring the opposite of redemption. Chas v'Shalom, God forbid. What a beautiful teaching today of Tanya, I must say. Today is the 10th day of the month, which is chapter 55 to chapter 59. If you say those 5 chapters, you do the Chitas of Day. I know there was an advertisement saying there's a class today, but there's no class today at 10 o'clock. We'll make sure get together in 2 weeks for the next class on the Thursday class. So that I've asked my daughter to send out an email saying that it was a mistake. I don't know if she's going to get around to do it, but that was a mistake. I did announce, I believe, last week that there was no class. So there is no class today at 10 o'clock, and neither next week. And Mitch will come together for the Thursday class in 2 weeks from today. Have a wonderful and beautiful day. Hope everybody's getting ready for Pesach. And I also beg everybody to sell the chametz either online or at Chabad. Have a wonderful and beautiful day.